In this tutorial, we're going to take a look at managing your track and channel views and all the different ways that you can go about setting things up to be how you'd like, and also finding certain tracks and channels when you have a high track count. And before we get started, if you are interested in one-on-one training or would like to contribute to the channel, just check out the description. All right, and with that, let's go ahead and get started. So if you're someone who works with a lot of songs that have high track counts, it's useful to be aware of all the different ways that we can go about managing what we see in the track column and the console. So let's take a look at that now. And to begin with, we'll start by taking a look at a new feature that was added in the 5.1 release, the track and channel search function. So if we come to the upper left corner and click on the track list button, we expand out that panel. And then down at the bottom, we have a new filter window. So if we just click on this and say we'd like to see only our drums, we can just begin typing. And then now we can see all of our drum tracks. We can click on the X to clear that, and all of the other channels return. So if we wanted to say find our vocals, I'll type in Vox, press enter. Then we can see our vocal tracks. So this is a pretty straightforward and handy feature, especially if you have a ton of tracks. You know, as I mentioned, this is relatively speaking not that many channels, but you can imagine if you have 50, 60 and above, this is going to be a pretty handy feature and will save you a lot of time. Now below our search and filter window, we have buttons where we can show and hide by track type. So the first one here, we can hide our audio channels. This is our instrument channels to show and hide, and you can see when we deselect, they're also deselected here in the track list, as well as in our track column. The next one that we have here is our folder tracks, and the drums are grouped in a folder. We then have our automation tracks, and I only have one automation track, which is here. That's down at the very bottom. We can show and hide that there. Now the final two, we have a layers button and our automation envelopes. So this is different than the automation track. And these are grayed out right now because we're not showing any layers or automation envelopes. If we come to our lead Vox though and click on this arrow to expand that out, we can see that there are layers and envelopes on this lead Vox. So if I expand those out, we can see that that shows there. And then let's expand out our automation envelope. We can see all of these now. And now these are active. So then we can just click to hide the envelopes and our layers. And again, this is going to be a lot more useful if you have multiple tracks with those envelopes and layers being shown in our track column, and you can easily hide and show those by clicking there. I'm going to go ahead and collapse these. Next, we have an ellipsis here, and I'm not sure when this was added, but this is going to be our track visibility options. So if we click once, then you can see there's a variety of options to show and hide. And these are pretty self-explanatory: show all tracks, show selected tracks, and so on. So if I wanted to hide the empty tracks, all of these tracks are actually empty, so everything is going to go away. We can come back to the ellipsis here and click on the undo visibility change to bring everything back. Next, we have track list scenes, and that is up at the top. By clicking on this button here, we open up a panel where we can add and remove scenes and manage what's going to be included with those scenes down below. And I'm actually going to do a separate tutorial for this, the track scenes and the mixed console scenes, because I'd like to spend a bit more time covering the functionality of these things. But just quickly, we can add a scene by clicking on the plus button, and I'm going to call this all and click OK. And then the blue tracks here, these are all of the drums. So I'm going to come just below that and click, hold, and drag to deselect all of the rest of the tracks, add another scene. I'm going to call this one drums, click OK. So now we can see we have two different scenes, all in drums. So if I double click on all, we bring all of our tracks back. If I double click on drums, then we're only viewing our drums. To remove, we can right click and remove these scenes. And again, we'll go into more depth on this in a separate tutorial. We can then hide the scenes panel by clicking again on this button here. And let's click, hold, and drag to bring all of the tracks back. We next have a groups button. So if we click on that, we open up a panel so that we can view our groups. And I only have one group that is our backing vocals. These three here, we can see the color matches there, but I can click once to highlight and select these tracks. And when these are grouped, then any adjustment that we make to one is going to affect the other. And I'll control click to take that back to 0 dB. If we arm for recording, if we mute, solo, if we'd like to temporarily disable the linking of those controls, then we can click on that button there. And now I can discreetly control the volume. I'll control click, add that back, and now they're grouped again. Also, I think we can hold shift if we'd like to make an adjustment just to one. So if I hold shift, no, that's going to make a fine adjustment. So let's try control. No, control takes it back to default. Alt. So alt is the magic key to temporarily disable the grouping. And if we right click on this, we have some management options for the grouping as well. And also, I'm going to hide the group panel, but know that if we hover on the border here, we get the double arrows. We can actually expand that out to see all of the channels that are contained within groups here. And as we've seen, we have these circles that we can click on to show or hide individual tracks. And we also saw that by click, hold, and dragging, we can show or hide consecutive tracks pretty quickly. And we've also seen the arrows here that we can use to expand out to see any automation or layers that are contained. We saw that on our lead Vox. So if we click once, we expand that out, we can see we have layers. We can expand our layers out, our envelopes. And again, we can show or hide independently with these circles, and then collapse everything back by clicking again on these arrows. Lastly, in the track list, if we were to right click, we have a variety of management options in this contextual menu. So we can see that we can edit the track, hide the track, show in the console, remove. So there's some useful functions here that we can make use of. And at the bottom, we can even pack a folder if we have multiple tracks selected. Now let's go ahead and hide the track list and move on to the wrench icon up above here, because this is going to offer you some visibility options as well. If we click once, we can see the menu here, and under visibility, we can colorize our track controls, and you can see that the track controls have been colorized in the track column. I'll go ahead and deselect that. We can show channel numbers in tracks. And at the bottom, we can actually show track notes. So if I go ahead and select that, we can see we now have a box where we can double click to enter notes, click outside to accept that. And if I open up the mix console and we see our lead Vox here, which is where I added the note to, we can come to the wrench icon here and choose to show our channel notes. And we can see that the note that I added in the track column is going to show up here within the console. I'm going to click to hide that. Let's close out the console and come back up. I'll double click and select that and just delete that out. Let's come to the wrench and hide the track notes. I'm sure most of you know that we can change the color of our tracks by clicking once on the border there. And if you notice on our lead Vox, it's kind of a little bit hard to see, but you can see we have two gray boxes here. Now the bottom one, and this is going to apply to any track that you have here, we can click on that to expand out our automation. Click again to hide that. This track has layers on it. As we've seen, we can click to show our layers like so. Now for our audio tracks, they're automatically by default going to have automation for volume and panning set up and active. For our instrument tracks, I've got a couple down at the bottom. The Synth 2, I don't have any automation on that. So if we click there, then it's not going to show anything. But the Synth 1, I do have automation added. So if I click on that, I can expand that out and we can see that there's automation applied to the cutoff. Let's click once to hide that. And of course, we can double click on the name to rename any track that we want at any time. If you'd like to create a folder, then the backing vocals are already in a group, but say we wanted to put these in a folder, we can click once to select the first one, hold shift, select the second one, then right click, and at the bottom we have pack folder, and now these are contained within a folder. Now we click on this folder icon to expand that out. You can see the manila folder is kind of open now and these are visible. If we click once, then they are hidden. And I think we've pretty much covered everything for the visibility and management options of the track column. So let's move on to the mix console. I'll click in the bottom right corner to open that up. And most of us already know that we can click on this arrow to detach the console and potentially move this over to a second monitor if we have that. To reattach, we click on the down arrow in that upper right hand corner. And as with the track list, we have a search and filter feature here. So if I type in cello, then we can see the one audio track for the cello. I can click on the X to hide that. And also with the track list, we can show and hide by channel type. So this first one is our audio, so we can hide all of our audio channels, our instrument channels, our effects channels, bus channels, and this is our VCA channels and aux channel. We have these same circles where we can click to show and hide individual channels. Also click, hold, and drag to quickly show and hide consecutive channels. And we can also hide this channel list if we don't want to see that by clicking here at the very bottom. We can hide that. Also, other panels, we can show or hide our inputs, outputs, external devices here. Our VST instrument panel is here. We then have control for a small or large view for our console. By default, this is going to be in the large view. If I click, then we go to the small view. And just notice that in small view, we have this button here to expand out our panels, because in the large view, we can access our inserts and sends up at the very top of our channels. But when we go into small view, those go away. And so then we need to click on this expand button to access our inserts and sends there. Now we also have a narrow and normal view. So we can click once to have a narrow view of our channels. And we also now have a setting to automatically expand our channels when they are selected. And that is in the options menu. If we click on that wrench icon, we can see auto expand selected channel, and that's going to be checked by default. That is a new option. So now when I select a channel, initially you will have to double click to expand that out, but then by clicking once after that, these will expand out automatically. Let's go back to the large mode. And let's take this back to the normal view. Now also, as with the track list, we had the track scenes that we could set up. We have that available for the console as well. So down at the bottom here, we have a button for Show Scenes Console. We can click to activate that. And now we have a panel that we can add and remove and manage scenes for the console. And again, this is going to be in a separate tutorial more in depth, but just quickly, this is going to function just the same as what we saw. So if I click on the plus button to add a scene, I'll call this all, press enter, and then let's hide all of the other channels besides the drums, click on the plus. Let's call this drums, enter to accept that. So now we can double click to bring everything back by double clicking on all, or double click on drums to only show our drums. And we can right click to remove our scenes. And then let me click, hold, and drag to bring everything back. And let's click once to hide that scenes panel. We also have a group button below our scenes button. So if I click on that, we open up a panel. If we right click, we have some management options. So we can click once to select, highlight, and select our backing vocals group. If we had multiple groups, then we could just click once to select those. We also have this circle where we can temporarily disable that grouping to make adjustments to the volume individually. I'll control click and take that back. So now these are grouped once again. And also, as we saw, holding Alt was the magic key to temporarily disable and make adjustments to a discrete channel. Let's hide that group panel. In our instruments panel, we now have a couple of buttons down at the bottom that will give us a compact or extended view option. So by default, it's going to be in the compact view. We can see our VST instruments that are within this song. If I click on the extended view, then we can actually see the preset that's being used by each of these. Now to finish up, we can go to the wrench icon because there's some other options for what we are viewing in the console. So if we click once, then we can access that. At the very top, we can control how the grouping works, keep effects channels to the right, keep bus channels to the right. These are pretty self-explanatory. Under visibility, link visibility of track list and console. So if we show or hide within the track list, then those will be hidden within the console. So let's go ahead and view the track list, and I'm going to click on the drums folder to hide all of the drums in our track column, and they should also go away within the console. Clicking again, we bring those back. Let's hide our track list, and that is because of this link visibility setting here. We have link expansion and visibility of folder tracks. That's on by default. So if we click on the folder icon for our drums, because these are all packed in the folder, they're going to be hidden in the console as well. If I click again, then we can see those. The auto expand selected channel, we already took a look at that. We can colorize our channel strips. We can show input controls for our channels. These will show up at the top here. So if I select that, we can see we now have control of our input gain for the channel and the polarity. We have sends, Q mix, input output connections. These are, the input is at the top, our output, these are all being sent to a drums bus. If I click here, then we can see different output settings. If I click at the top for the input, we have different input settings. So input output connections, that's why those are showing. If we click, then those go away. We have our VCA connections, and these are going to be the boxes down below here. So I do have 2 VCA channels within the console. Those are at the end, VCA 1 and VCA 2. So when we have the VCA connection box checked, then we can choose a connection to make for each individual channel. If I wanted to have this controlled by VCA 1, I can select here. If I want VCA 2 to control this, then I can select there. I'm going to set these back to none, to none. If we come back to the options menu and deselect that, then you can see that those boxes go away. And these boxes are only going to show up if you add VCA channels. If you don't add VCA channels, then these will not be visible. We next can view our group assignments, and we do have the one group for our backing vocals. So if you take note of these 3 backing vocal channels, when I select this, then we can see the name of our group shows up at the bottom. We then saw our channel notes by clicking here, and we already took a look at that earlier. And I believe that that is everything. Okay, so I hope you found a few useful gems in this tutorial, and I will catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching.